Have you ever loved a TV and film franchise so much you watched it multiple ways? Have you watched every episode of every series in order of release? And then watched every episode by star date? Then watched it all in completely random order for no good reason? And after all that, sat down for a year to watch every current live-action episode twice in an effort to come up with a list of all 755-ish episodes, objectively ranked from worst to best. If you're not that crazy, I'm the Crazy Trekkie, here to do the legwork for you.
I'm your host, Dustin Wing. I've been watching Trek for 30 years, ever since the first run of TNG.
If you haven't seen an episode on the list, go watch it yourself to get the full scoop and make up your own mind about how good or bad an episode really is. I know there's going to be thumbs downs every time I put someone's favorite episode lower on the list than they think it deserves. In general, this list is a starting point for discussion. I know I'm probably going to miss big on a few. Change my mind in the comments. After the series is over, I plan to circle back and make revision episodes based on viewer feedback. We will not be adding movies or any of the animated series or short treks to this list. Nor will we be touching on The Cage, the original pilot episode of TOS, because most of the good content from it is included in the menagerie. Here we'll be tackling every complete live-action series, up to Discovery Season 3 and Picard through Season 1. 2 and 3-part episodes will be ranked together. Each episode will consist of 3 segments. First, we'll tackle a block of episodes, then a segment called Thanks, Majel, where we'll run a counter through the entire franchise every time a character played or voiced by Majel Barrett Roddenberry says something during a scene. The final short segment will be a satire roll, contrasting scenes from this week's block of episodes with similar scenes from other movies and television.
Now, an honorable mention for the worst thing in Trek history. You know what I'm talking about. The intro to Enterprise.
Well, not an episode on its own. If you actually watched the intro to all 98 episodes, you'd have watched 2.5 episodes worth of not just the worst intro in Trek history, but one of the worst in TV history. Coming in at 755 out of 755, the worst episode of Trek, When the Show Ran Out of Money. Or Shades of Grey. It's kind of a perfect send-off to the first 2 seasons of TNG, which has approximately 4 good episodes over 2 seasons. This episode is the product of using too much of the season budget on the episode Q Who and a few others from Season 2. And it didn't help that the Hollywood writer's strike of the late 80s left producer Maury Hurley to chuck this piece of Bolian feces together to get an episode to print. In fact, the season was supposed to be 26 episodes, and was cut short at episode 22 because of those 2 reasons already mentioned. This episode was shot in 3 days as opposed to the week an episode is normally shot in. This isn't just the worst episode of Trek, but one of the worst episodes of anything I've ever seen on TV. During the pre-credit intro, we came into Riker having already stabbed himself with a thorn of a sentient plant. Neither Jonathan Frakes nor LeVar Burton seem to even be trying to act in this scene. Diana Muldaur seems to be the only actress on the set actually trying to play their part. And it's too bad this is the last episode we'll ever see Dr. Pulaski in. I guess they couldn't even afford batteries for this episode because the medical tricorder, shown at about 3 minutes into the episode, has none of the traditional lights flashing. Counselor Troi, throughout the episode, acts as ridiculous as she did in the pilot episode Encounter at Farpoint. 2 seasons of character development out the window. Don't worry, Deanna. The writers will be back to throw you under the bus a few more times over the next 5 seasons. When Geordi and Data go back down to the planet to collect a sample of whatever infected Riker, they're pretty lax about safety protocols and don't even use a biological sample container. There's weird, ominous danger music at improper times. And at 16 minutes 10 seconds, there's a shot of cutting between people's faces in sickbay while they say nothing over ominous music that's pure time filler. The entire episode that Riker is awake, he speaks in bad, half-hearted jokes. Even the joke at the end falls incredibly flat. The rest of the runtime is filled by clips of Riker from the first 2 seasons, all his sexual conquests and most action-oriented scenes to purely turn out an episode of Trek. I find the name of the episode ironic because you could name half the episodes of Star Trek Shades of Grey and it would fit. Trek at its best explores the gray areas of the human condition and tests the bonds of what makes us all who we are. This is not one of those episodes. The only thing that this episode tests is the limits of the viewer's patience and how far you can stretch a show with no budget. Number 754. The children shall dance on your grave. And the children shall leap. Welcome to the tip of the iceberg that is TOS Season 3. We'll be seeing a lot of this season near the bottom of the list. It's the only Trek show, in my estimation, that actively got worse as time went on. The 3rd season was only produced because Gene Roddenberry stirred up enough people in a letter-writing campaign. Fans got their Season 3, but a show on an already small budget was slashed by $10,000 an episode. While I'm sure many of you expected the first episode on this list to be Spock's brain, I just can't even with this one. A landing party beams down to a Federation colony to find the dead bodies of all the adults laid out around them. The children of those colonists seem perfectly fine and oblivious to the fact that their parents are dead. They start dancing around the graves of their parents, singing nursery rhymes. Which, let's look for a second. Does the Enterprise have a tombstone creation station on the ship to get these bodies buried with perfect headstones in what seems like just an hour or so? We find out later that the children are being coerced by some kind of ghost alien named Gorgon. As TrekRanks.com calls him, the shower curtain lawyer. Because in real life, the actor who played him was a lawyer with no acting experience that used this to get his Screen Actors Guild card. He's trying to get them to take over the ship so he can grow an army of followers on another planet. But not before Kirk humanizes the death of the children's parents by showing them pictures of them alive and happy versus dead. I have so many questions. Why at 32 minutes does Uhura have a convenient mirror at her station? Is evil a logical concept, Mr. Spock? Why, when the kids are mind-controlling the rest of the crew to take over the ship, is Kirk seemingly immune? I mean, seriously, the only positive part of this episode is the ethnic diversity of the children on TV for 1968. Walter Koenig once came out as saying that this was the worst episode of TOS. The biggest takeaways from this episode are, when playing rock, paper, scissors, always throw a rock for mind control. And under the right circumstances, as humans, children will be equally willing to murder their parents. At 7:53, we have Space Wizards, or Cat's Paw. The episode opens to a crewman beaming back aboard and falling dead onto the transporter pad. The big three, that's Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, beam down into the ad for every Halloween haunted house for the last 30-plus years. When they finally make it past the ghosts trying to frighten them, they enter the Wicked Witch of the West's castle and find a black cat and a level 26 wizard with +6 to intelligence, +30 to ice resistance. They're taken prisoner and put into a dungeon with the fakest high school science class plastic skeleton in TV history. While all this is going on, Lieutenant DeSalle is in command of the bridge for the first time in his reoccurring appearance on TOS. He's actually pretty good except for the weird credits to Navy Beans line that hasn't aged well. The Space Wizard and a female cleric mess with the big three, particularly Kirk, for really no plot purpose whatsoever. And towards the end, the cleric wants to destroy everybody in this very disjointed plot. And we haven't even gotten to the worst part of the episode. In an effort to escape, a giant black house cat chases them through the dungeon in some really bad visual effects work. This is like D-list home camcorder kinda bad. Oh wait, it's still not over? Then at the end, it's revealed that the two D&D character-generated pre-mades are really bird puppets? Shot at about 6 frames a second? This was the first episode filmed with Chekhov, though not the first to air. And he had to wear this terrible Davy Jones wig that doesn't fit him right until his hair grew to where the producers asked him to grow it. Yeah, they really wanted to capture how hot the Monkees band and TV show were at the moment in pop culture. I don't think the producers did Walter Koenig any favors with that one. Overall, it's a silly Halloween episode that didn't really hit the mark in what it was aiming for. And number 752, the one with the interracial kiss. Plato's Stepchildren. This episode is no messing around, jumping straight into the terrible plot. The Enterprise landing party is ordered to make contact with a civilization that's thousands of years old and govern themselves based on the writings of Earth philosopher Plato, because they visited Earth several millennia ago. They also possess telekinetic powers, except for one dwarf that they treat as kind of a second-class slave, then try and blackmail McCoy into staying and becoming their permanent doctor by making Kirk and Spock act out a very badly scripted but very hilarious stage show, leading to Uhura and Nurse Chapel being blackmailed into being beamed down and performing a love scene with Kirk and Spock. This should have been the big payoff to Nurse Chapel's 3 seasons of infatuation with Spock, but she can't enjoy it due to sheer embarrassment. Eventually, Kirk figures out that because of the planet they're on, he now also has the telekinetic power, and turns the tables on his captors. The basic rundown doesn't begin to talk about the ridiculousness they force William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy to deal with. Kirk is forced to smack himself, be ridden as a horse by the dwarf, and do other weird interpretive dance moves. Spock mariachi dances around Kirk's head. This is so far out of the realm of being Star Trek, but is somehow satisfying watching William Shatner unleash his inner William Shatner while beating himself up. The episode has a couple of redeeming moments, like when Kirk challenges the idea that this is the most democratic society that's ever lived, because a dictatorship by any other name is still a dictatorship. And when he tells the dwarf that in the Federation, it doesn't matter what your status or height is, everyone is treated equal. But neither these moments nor the most uncomfortable kiss in Trek history save this one from the bottom of the list.
Ah, computer.
That program is available.
Thanks, Majel. Majel. Thanks, Majel. Majel.
Of course.
Thanks, Majel.
Captain, what is it? What's going on?
Majel.
Now all I want to do is crawl away and die.
Thanks, Majel.
Very good idea, Captain. Come on.
Thanks, Majel. Satire in Trek. Satire in Trek.
This is called sympathetic magic.
Do you know much about voodoo? I don't believe in voodoo.
Well, I'll bet you credits to Navy beans we can put a dent in it.
Credits will do fine.
I cannot disobey!
So listen to me, you will disobey this order!
Then please command superstition orders, sir!
There is a curse on your ship.
Who has summoned me?
Disturbs my slumber.
Who are you?
What is this? The same thing that kept me from having the power made me a dwarf.
All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes.
We've just seen is not real.
Never happened.